Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Shiloh, and I'm here with
Dr. Scott. Welcome back, folks.
So we are jumping into episode 6 today. And hey, did you want to welcome anyone? You got anything for the week you want to talk about? Anything exciting?
Wait, what?
I don't know. There's nothing. Don't feel pressure.
Well, no, wait. Full disclosure, I over the Thanksgiving break, as you know, I went to New York with friends.
Oh, wait. Everyone knows because I posted that you were drinking fancy drinks.
Oh, right.
And I was standing on the bridge in the middle of the night talking a jumper down.
You were doing the hard work. But what I did do was pick up a head cold. So I am flying. I'm telling you, that over-the-counter severe cold and flu stuff, that might as well be crack. I'm a lightweight completely, but I'm a little buzzy right now.
There's 2 drops of rain in Los Angeles, and we're both like... oh, okay.
I'm just completely acclimated to Los Angeles. So I apologize. I'll probably be like coughing.
That's all right. I'll talk for you today.
But what else? Is anything else going on? We have one thing that we can't disclose yet, which is really cool.
Do you have to talk with your lips not moving when you say that?
Yes. But it'll reveal in a little while, and it's really cool.
Yes. So in our episode today, we're going to talk about incels.
Yikes.
And where we are in the field in terms of relating it to violence and threat assessment, and also just psychological explanations, because it's such a new term and phenomenon.
I think you're going to have to back up and give a good definition, because although, the research that I was doing in media, I didn't realize that Criminal Minds had done an episode on incels.
They did?
Because they do an episode on everything. They've been on for a gazillion years.
I know.
But I don't think that means it's come into the vernacular. So we have to explain that it's a portmanteau.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm really late to the game on this term. And I want to know when you sort of became aware of it, because you threw it out there when we were having dinner one night with Jen Haley, the writer from Mindhunter.
Right.
And I was like, wait, why am I not clued into this? And I kind of went home and did a little bit of my own research and thought, oh, that thing.
Well, it was new to me, and I can't. Let me just say that I had my first full-blown, having to immerse myself in that world because of my day job.
Gotcha.
We had to investigate a phenomenon of that sort, and without going into protecting confidentiality and identity stuff, and we won't go there. But what I did was go down the rabbit hole with the Emergency Outreach Bureau as we were going through not only the person who had been referred to us, but the websites, and there's multiple websites. And anyway, we're getting away from it. What does incel mean?
Okay. So I want to back up, just do a little bit of history. So originally in 1993, internet, computers, web forums are pretty new, right? A college student at Carleton University in Ottawa by the name of Alana, a woman, she built a simple all-text website that was called Alana's Involuntary Celibacy Project. So she designed this as essentially a safe space of inclusiveness for people who were feeling and experiencing the things that she was feeling and experiencing, and talk about their struggles of not being sexually active when the rest of the college community felt like they were.
Right.
So after a few years of founding this project, she was celibate, but she, gradually became more confident, eventually started dating. She ended up, I think her first relationship after that was with a woman, realized she was bisexual, and just, kind of had her sexual awakening later, and eventually turned the website over to someone else. So she never looked back. The website evolved into, essentially what are sort of several forums and websites and arenas online, including 4chan and Incels.me, for this community that we're talking about.
So going back, so the portmanteau there is involuntary celibate, so incel.
Correct.
So this is a community that has adopted this self-descriptor as someone who is by no fault of their own, or sometimes they will address some part of playing a role in this, that they are not able to engage in intimate relationships with a woman. There are actually some gay incels, but it's a very, very, very small percentage. And what I was going to ask you, in your research about Alana, this is what I could not find, so maybe you did. Did you get any indication of how rapidly it grew, that community, that online community, before she gave it over to this person, by the way, that she had never met in
never
real
met
life?
him. No.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know. But we think, 1993, all the way up to, we're just kind of hearing the term for the first time in media 5 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of evolution that happened there, probably very underground, only online, that we're just not aware of. So I think that would be pretty tough to track.
Okay.
But I don't have any information.
That would be fascinating to see how quickly it exploded, or what the numbers were after she gave it over, because what we're about to go into is that once it was given over to this other individual, it became something very different.
Right. So, yes, incels, just by definition, is involuntarily celibate. So this means that they have tried to have sex several times but have failed. And as you touched on, generally this is blamed on the people, the women, because this is, again, heterosexual males, that will not have sex with them. And they do actually blame it on certain characteristics of their own as well. So some of them, it's physical characteristics, and some of them it's mental. So there's a subsection that calls themselves mental cells, and that's because they say they have some sort of quote unquote mental blockage, usually, a developmental disorder or a social anxiety disorder that keeps them from being able to talk and interact with women. There's height cells. They're not tall enough.
Well, yeah, and there's actually science to back that up, as far as,
choosing mates and partners.
Yeah, exactly,
like
exactly.
Sure. Wrist cells. So they believe that their bone structure is such that they have smaller wrists than the average male, and there's a lot of obsession over bone structure and feeling inferior to the alpha males that are out there due to body and bone structure.
Okay, so they definitely go into this division, this very clear division between alpha and beta males.
Right. And I'll definitely, we're going to touch on all those archetypes that they have. But it's interesting, despite all of this, there's this huge sense of entitlement
That is some mental gymnastics right there, isn't it?
It in so many ways. There's so many cognitive distortions going on here that it's really hard to comprehend. But mental gymnastics is a great way to explain it, because you sort of challenge this line of thinking and they've got an answer for that. It doesn't mean it's rational or realistic, but they've already got something.
And I think that's going to tie into our discussion about possible diagnoses as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh, for sure.
So here, what you're talking about, what I hear you saying then, is that here are people that revel in this identification as a beta, as a sort of a secondary in the hierarchical power structure in society, in male society, that they are saying we are, for organic or other reasons, we're secondary.
Well, they put themselves even below betas. They're a different category below betas.
Oh, I didn't realize
there's
that.
Alpha, beta, and incel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Boy,
there's 3 tiers.
Okay. So, but within that, I mean, what's interesting, because when you read in feminist literature about self-loathing, my experience has not led me to where these guys have gone with it. They have done that mental gymnastics backflip with a perfect landing into I'm a piece of crap and it's everybody else's fault, or it's my fault, but you need to there's a sense of entitlement to it that's just remarkable.
That doesn't usually
it's remarkable.
Go with sort of that self-loathing, low self-esteem that we see with other people.
Right.
People generally feel I'm not worthy of that and I'm not entitled to that. When there's sort of that negative self-view line of thinking, this has that outlier of the entitlements there. And I've been denied this whole time. So I want to go through, let's just jump into some of the lingo just for definition purposes. And so we get an idea of how they interact and how they talk and what the labels mean. So I want to give just a quick shout out to YouTuber ContraPoints for the excellent intellectual and very entertaining video on this topic. She just kills it. She's really clever and sort of weaving in her views, but also explaining this in a really great way to, if you're coming new into it, that she gives a great overview on this topic. So let's go with the different tiers that we're talking about. The alpha male. The incels are going to refer to the male archetype, the alpha male, as Chad, and Chads for the group of them. Chad is someone who has lots of sex. He talks to women with ease. He has a sloped brow and a strong jawline, and he just is, the top cream of the crop of men physically, and not necessarily super intellectual, but can go up to women and carry on conversations with them very naturally.
Walks through the world with ease.
Yes.
So it's interesting, they pick a name that is almost like out of Animal House. It's almost like a frat name from Animal House, right?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. So Chad's counterpart, female counterpart, would be Stacy. And Stacy is the buxom blonde that wears makeup and has a fake tan and only wants the best things in life, and she only has sex with the Chads. So she's kind of the alpha female that everyone covets to have sex with. So Chads and Stacys go very well together.
Okay.
You have below them the betas, or what they call the normies, is your average guy and gal. The girl they call Becky, and think of her, I don't know, kind of how I'm dressed, like, black leggings, hooded sweatshirt, messy bun on her head, probably, has some strong feminist views and a little bit annoying, but guys aren't falling all over themselves, as she walks by getting instant erections like they are with Stacy's. So they have Becky's, and then there's also, there's not a name for it, but there's the normie male as well. And that comes into play a little bit later with one of their cognitive distortions that we'll talk about as far as what role the normie man plays.
Well, I'm already wondering now, like, how significant is it that the normie male doesn't have a name assigned to him?
Ooh.
Dun, 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 dun.
He's so insignificant.
Right.
Doesn't even have a name.
Oh, God.
Should we give him a name? So what would be equivalent to, like, a Becky for a guy? Scott?
Maybe Scott or Bob. No, Bob, because I know too many good Bobs.
See, you can't start doing that. Just got to go with your gut. Yeah. A Dan?
No, not Dan.
Okay, so and then incels are bottom of the barrel, below average guys, right? As you kind of pointed out already, and we talked about some of their characteristics. They also refer to women in all sorts of derogatory terms.
It's horrific.
It really is. It's horrific, and it's so interesting how. I've seen some interviewed on some shows, and they'll say, well, we're just desensitized to it. That's just the way we talk. And it's completely brushed off. But it's like that. And there's such a removal of humanization.
But was there ever that there to begin with?
I don't know.
We'll come back to that.
Okay. So they have some very... again, dehumanizing and robotic names for women. They'll call them femoids.
Right.
Or
femoids, like on the Bionic Woman, the fembots.
Yes, fembots. But there's the common, slut, bitch, whore, you name it. And that's how they're referring to them as they're talking about them online.
Which also is another cognitive distortion, mental gymnastics, where because you see these in a lot of postings online where women have collected, off Tinder or, these approaches that men have made them. So the man makes an approach that's pretty clod-like, not good. Or if it's even just sort of somewhat neutral, or sends a dick pic or something, and the woman responds back, not interested. Immediately, the guy calls her a whore. Immediately. Like, wait.
Which makes no sense.
She just turned you down for sex, and you're calling her a whore.
Yeah.
Which, mind-blowing. So,
right.
Yeah, that's a real easy little excuse to say, oh, I'm just immune to it.
We're desensitized. That's just how we talk. It's just locker room talk, right?
It's locker room. Well, yeah.
Boys will be boys. Another interesting term is the term roasty. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
And you don't want to hear much about it, right? I'll be real quick.
You know what? It makes, I have to say, I remember when I was doing the research, it made me very sad.
Yeah. So, roasty would be how they refer to particularly Stacy's vulva, because she's had so much repeated sex with all of these men that it now sort of resembles roast beef down there, because she's giving away all this sex and she's just, so manhandled that it's now represented by a roast beef sandwich in some sense. But ironically, if she chooses one of these incels and had sex with him over and over and over again, it wouldn't be the same thing. It's so weird. It's only when she has sex with other guys multiple times.
The level of detachment and lack of sort of insight and empathy just continues to astound me. But once again, I think there's a clinical reason for it. I think there's a clinical and an environmental reason that individuals get to this point.
Yeah, I think so too. And the more that I dove into this, I thought, I've seen a flavor of that before in a different population, or I've seen something that feels similar to that. So then there's this concept of the red pill, and I think this has been used in various different communities. And of course, this is taken from The Matrix, getting to know the truth of the world by taking the red pill and knowing all about the Matrix. Or you can, take the blue pill instead and not know any better.
Right, the blue pill means that you stay in your sort of contrived illusion, and you choose to have no knowledge of what the real world looks like. If you take the red pill, then you actually see supposedly the alternative real world. But now there's the additional layer, which is the black pill. Right. So for red pill, they believe, and this is also stems from the larger umbrella of the men's rights movement, it's essentially a theory or worldview of human sexuality that women by nature are hypergamous. So they get into relationships based on one's social status or attractiveness that's a level or so above what they are. And that's just what all women want and what all women are going to do. So incels believe, there's equal amounts of men and women with the same attractiveness level and social status, that there should be an equal person for everyone, and it should be distributed equally. Are they also members of the Flat Earth Society? Because this is bordering on.
Hang on, I'm just getting going.
Jeez.
So that, ideally there would be a 10 for a 10, and there would be a 5 for a 5, and a 1 for a 1.
Right.
So,
but
Chad,
those damn Stacys are messing the whole system up, right?
So yes. Actually, all women. They're saying all women are trying to go above their number. And so 20% of the men are getting all the women. And then there's these average guys and incels that are left with nothing.
Well, I'm using air quotes when I'm saying getting, because what does getting mean? I mean, even if it was just sex, even if it was just getting for sex, there's still going to be I'm trying to rationalize something that makes no sense. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And I'm coursing on cold and flu medicine.
Right.
So.
So they call it the 80-20 rule, and basically 20% of the men are going to get all the women.
For God's sake.
So how would you challenge that? You would say, well, okay, there's normal guys that get married and have relationships, and it's just not all Chads and Stacys, right? So the way that they would come back and say, oh, we got an answer for that, hang on, is the idea of the alpha fucks, beta bucks. And so that means that, yes, women in their 20s are going to have sex with all kinds of Chads, but then in her 30s, she's going to settle down, find a financially stable guy, find a normie, and have that financial stability. And she's still going to continue to be a slut. She's going to be unfaithful, but she's going to turn out a couple kids with this normie. And then eventually she is going to leave him, take the kids, and run off with a new Chad. So then these guys all have to pay alimony and child support and are sad and are left behind when their Stacys are off with Chad, finally.
Okay. I
know, not much more. The black pill. So the black pill is very incel specific as well. And eventually it's this mantra that you're going to be a virgin forever. Happiness in relationships are completely unachievable and impossible. And the only option is to be at mercy of this.
So blue pill, you stay in the delusion fantasy.
Right.
Red pill, you see the world as it is. Black pill is gritty reality, sort of hopelessness.
Right.
But just that this is the reality. There is nothing better. This is the best I'm ever going to have.
And where when they are challenged with certain lines of thinking, that then becomes part of the conspiracy, or what, like, of course you would tell me that. So they'll say like, oh, well, people tell me you should just be yourself. There's lots of average guys that get women. And they say, yeah, of course you would tell me that. But if I'm just myself, then I'm just this pathetic loser that has, tiny wrists and, not strong jawline. Who am I ever going to get? And so this is all perpetuated on an online community of these cognitive distortions.
And I can't help but think that as bad as it has gotten in those communities, that it's not made worse by the presence of people trolling. That there are some real sociopaths sociopaths generally don't have self-loathing, but that like, oh, here's a group of people that are malleable in this particular arena.
Sure. That
let me just fuck with them, which is just, I just know that's happening. I just know it.
Oh, yeah. 100%. So, it's this perpetual cycle online, and, they're posting about how they feel, and people are saying, yep, you're right, you're a loser, so am I. And there's rampant suicidal ideation online with them. But I thought maybe, we could at least step in here and say, okay, what's sort of the psychological take? I would be interested to know, okay, what would we do if this person was presented in front of us as a client? What would we start sort of grabbing at in the air as far as what does this seem like as far as diagnoses, or how would we go about treating someone?
So I have not had a client that I would say meets the criteria or this set of behaviors and sort of belief system that we're talking about right now. Certainly have seen flavors of it. Mm-hmm. However, I did consult with, interestingly enough, when I was looking for the article that from Sage Publishing, because for those of you who don't know, there are these online databases that, when you're in grad school, your school has immediate subscriptions, and you have immediate access to these very valuable journal articles, which, of course, you don't have access to when you're on your own.
A poor psychologist paying back your student loans.
Paying back student loans. But I was able to, a friend of mine who collects those journals actually had a digital and sent it to me. And one of the things that she said was that she actually had an incel who had been coming to therapy for several months. And this is in the Midwest.
Wow.
But that it was more difficult than any pathology she had dealt with because it hit her on a number of levels. He was so angry, and so much of the anger was focused on her because she was the easiest female target.
I am so shocked to hear he was working with a female therapist.
This is part of the long. They're looking at the long goal. They're looking at the long road picture because it is about establishing more healthy relationships, reparenting, and working through some of these things. And it does. It takes years. And I have colleagues that do full practices with borderline, and access to issues. That would exhaust me. I mean, I would not be capable of doing that, and I would not be the right pick for that population to do full time. These people would not be able to do what I do or what you do on a daily basis, right? So we all have.
How many times did we get that side eye? How can you work with sex offenders?
I know, and
question.
And by that time, you and I, we were gaining mastery in that area. I know that we bring our kind of snarkiness and our humor to this, but what I would want to say is that. And there's some incels we're going to get into in a second that have done horrific things. Mm-hmm. They're still human. And they got there. There was a starting point somewhere, and they got to here where they made this decision. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. I have very limited private practice, and it's very specific. And I have never treated anyone that meets this criteria. But I thought so much resonated with the work that we've done with online offenders.
Yeah.
And specifically those with a diagnosis of pedophilia, which is interesting because that's so different. And research tells us now that is something in their hardwiring and something more akin to a sexual orientation. Whereas obviously this incel mantra and mentality isn't. That was watered and fed and grown somewhere, right? So I'm still seeing these cognitive distortions that are so strong, and I got an answer for everything, and you can challenge me with my belief, and you maybe make a little headway in treatment, but guess what? They leave your office and then they go jump online, and it unravels all of that work.
Right, because someone who was doing maybe object relations type work or even psychoanalytic work, even if they're not actually doing analysis with someone like this, would say that, I'm going to tolerate this anger long term because this person is doing reparative work. Because, and I mean, we've now lumped so many things into, sort of personality disorder, NOS, but, we used to have a depressive personality disorder or self-defeating personality disorder. Remember that was I think 15 years ago. Now, if we were, this is almost like that. It's like self-loathing personality disorder, except that there's a constellation of factors and behaviors, and the online reinforcement, and stay with me here, is that, look, we all want to have a sense of mastery of something in our lives. We want to sit, it may not be fun and it may not be pleasurable, but it's comfortable. So if you sit in self-loathing and you sit in hate and anger, then it's like, oh, and I'm not the only one. I share this with these guys all over the world. Mm-hmm. That is transformative in a very bad way. Right. That's what I think is going on. I mean, I think that there may be, just ballparking it here, there's some lack of empathy stuff. There's certainly a factor of having less empathy, which, and especially in some of the examples you're going to give, I really wonder if there's something going on the autism spectrum, like what we would call Asperger's, very, very high functioning, but really not getting emotions. Right. And not being able, and having no distress tolerance whatsoever for social interactions. Is that what you found?
So let me just address a couple of avenues first that one might pursue in treatment. This would be someone that you would want to validate their frustration. The frustration is a real thing,
Yeah.
Right? It's not necessarily a delusion or false belief, even though some of the other background stuff might feel that way. But if they are having a difficult time relating to people and not sexually active, and the rest of the world is sort of getting on in, healthy, appropriate ways, then yeah, of course that's going to be frustrating.
Let's just say this. The belief is that everybody else is out doing the beast with two backs and they aren't, right?
Right.
Isn't that it? That's part of it.
Yeah. And that it's coming pretty easy for people. So yes, validating their frustrations initially would be something I think that would go a long way in helping build rapport when you're first starting out in treatment with them. But then I think providing some psychoeducation to the person about what locus of control is.
We have not covered that concept, have we?
Okay, no, I don't think we have.
It's great. It's a basic one that go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Yeah, I'm rambling on here.
When we talk about locus of control, we talk about there's an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control. Locus meaning center or
where it stems from.
Exactly. So if your locus of control is internal, it means that you feel like you have a sense of facility and a sense of mastery over aspects of your life. Basically, you're the captain of your soul, making your own destiny, right? Within reason, versus the external locus of control where someone takes, almost what we would say a victim mentality, like things are done to me. I have no control over my environment. I don't have control over the factors in my life. Therefore, I'm just like a pinball in the cosmic pinball machine, just being bounced back and forth. There's no efficacy on my part.
Right. And generally people fall on one end of the spectrum or the other.
Right.
For God's sake, you can Google locus of control quiz and take one and see kind of generally, are you more internal or external? Do things happen to you or do you make things happen?
Right.
So to provide some education on this to the potential incel client would be one area to go, but then also focus on, okay, what are your strengths? What are areas in which you control in your life? And sort of hone in on those and start little by little building on those strengths. Hopefully trying to shift at least some locus of control to internal. But again, it's exploration, and these are very preliminary suggestions as well. But then getting them to process enough where they're able to recognize their own role in the process of rejection, however difficult that may be. Because rejection hurts. It's awful.
Yeah. And it's unavoidable.
It's unavoidable. And yes, more men have to put up with it than women. But it's very common. And if they're using self-rejection issues and projecting them onto external sources, you really want to shift them back to say, okay, what piece of this are you responsible for? Do you not have great communication skills? Do you just have not a lot of experience with female? There's all different areas where you can go. But there's so much anger embedded in this line of thinking that is also another facet that needs to be addressed. And we're seeing it as directed outward, but a lot of mental health professionals are saying you really have to look at that it's a reflection of the anger that they hate themselves, right, and the loathing that's there. So to sort of, and that's where they bond a lot of the time online as well. So hopelessness is something you need to definitely attack and address, but also realize, okay, that's a touchstone of the black pill theory. So it's going to be really, really difficult.
And now it's also, if hopelessness has been integrated into your identity, this is who we are. We don't have hope. So you're going to have to do some foundation work, go in there and route that pillar out and replace it with something else. That's really difficult work in the therapy room.
Long term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet.
No.
And yet.
But I was just going to make a comment about constantly being aware of suicide risk as well, because with the extreme hopelessness and the internal anger, and it almost agreeing with, yes, this is never going to get better, there is a lot of suicidal ideation. And it's also kind of tossed around flippantly as well. You know, they have these images and terms that they call suicide fuel, where it's, you know, there might be a picture of, it looks like sort of first person point of view, where you walk into a party and everyone turns around and looks at you and gives you a disgusted look. That's how they feel like they're going through life all the time, that all the Chads and Stacys are turning around and just looking at them like that. And so they might throw out these memes that they call suicide fuel.
Well, my mind goes all over the place on this, because immediately what came up for me is folie à deux, which is a shared delusion, and the idea that by creating a type of meme, the suey fuel, you're planting seeds. Right. You know, so someone who may be lost and looking for an identity, and they hook on to this one and like, oh, this is who I am, and this is the way the world sees me. Now I have an understanding. It's like, no. That's actually not accurate. But you're hooking on to the easiest target.
Throughout this, I teeter back and forth between such anger for them and such sadness of how sad this is. I just can't imagine, you know, if I had a son who was, you know, turning into this or dealing with something like this, how heartbreaking and awful it would be. Helpless as a parent.
Yeah.
So let's go into some high profile incidents that were associated with violence. And when the shooting in Isla Vista happened in 2014 involving Elliot Rodger, of course, that was high profile. Of course, from a criminal behaviorist and true crime standpoint, I looked at that case, you know, a bit, but I don't know why the term incel just kind of slipped past me. You know, when I was saying that, I just kind of came to terms with this term recently.
Well, the incel wasn't the heavy hitter in that narrative, the mass murder.
True.
You know, the shooting.
True.
I mean, that's what it was. And then other things continue to reveal themselves, which was, you know, his manifesto and then the history behind all this stuff. But you didn't really have a 5-letter word that doesn't register in your vernacular.
True.
Totally makes sense. I didn't remember it then. I was thinking like, boy, this guy is really distorted. Like, you could watch the tapes. It's like, wow, he really, like, there's almost some body dysmorphia going on because he really didn't have an accurate view of what he looked like.
You know, I'm glad you said that.
Because he looked like a Chad.
I think so too. Total pretty boy, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad you said body dysmorphia, because that is one of those little light bulbs that goes off. You know, there's kind of all these little things that are fluttering as far as, you know, diagnoses that you think about with them. And
what if those are the gateway? Like, what if if this sort of incel movement, this identity constellation, they're just thousands of different avenues that can get you there.
Right.
As we become more of a polarized and online society where you're disinhibited, and the anonymity of your online community allows you to become, like you were saying earlier of that interview, that become more and more desensitized. Right.
And you're isolated. So Elliot Rodger, he was a 22-year-old University of Santa Barbara student who in 2014 killed 6 people and injured 14 others before taking his own life. He had in Santa Barbara. So he had shot people. He had run them down with his car. And he had previously that day, as part of his sort of master plan that he had laid out, went to a sorority house, and he was going to shoot a bunch of the women that lived in the sorority house. But good for them, they didn't open the door to him and they didn't let him in. So his plan was foiled. And he ended up just out on the streets around the university instead, picking off Chads and Stacys. So there's, in the podcast, the Getting Off podcast, it's by 2 attorneys who discuss true crime stories. They're kind of the attorney version of us.
Oh, cool.
They have a great biographical episode on him. I'm not going to go into all that. They dive deep into his manifesto and his background. But you might want to, if you want more information specifically on Elliot Rodger, they do an entire episode dedicated to that on their podcast. But yes, I remember him as that sort of pretty boy, smug guy who uploaded this long-winded video about how he couldn't get laid and his day of retribution, and how he was so entitled, and that cars and money and wealth and the right watches and his looks and clothes wasn't ever enough.
Speaking, I mean, and that bears some weight in this as well. This was the son of a very successful Hollywood, I think, a director or producer, okay. Going to a very expensive school in a very expensive city. Yep. This guy did have everything, and he was, just aesthetically, he was very attractive. I mean, this guy had facial symmetry, and he's, all his pictures, his selfies he's wearing expensive clothes. He's in an expensive car. There's lots
of selfies, by the way.
A lot of selfies. So, ding, 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 narcissism.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, yes.
Right.
Laid on about as thick as it could be.
Yeah.
But yes, so he did have access to all of that. And so I really think that's why the incel community looks up to him, not just because he did something and took a stance and did something about it, but if anyone had a chance, he had a chance, and he still was turned down and rejected. And,
okay.
You know
okay.
What I mean?
Yeah. No. You're getting now. Wow. I had not put that together, because I know with the next case that you're going to talk about, Elliot has become sort of a martyr. Right.
So he referred to himself in that video as a supreme gentleman.
That's it.
So that's what they all now revere him as the supreme gentleman. So Elliot Rodger had been diagnosed previously with Asperger's and then pervasive developmental disorder, NOS. So again, kind of talking about some of the lack of empathy, the disconnect. Do you want to say a little bit more about how that might fit with the line of thinking that we're seeing?
Yeah. So when clinically you're going to look at Asperger's at the very, very high end of the autism scale. It's very high functioning. And in fact, I think we're actually moving away from saying Asperger's. We're just saying spectrum disorder.
Right.
Because there's so many different points and permutations along that spectrum. But then some of the things that are, particularly if you go to the DSM, and I'm going to pick up my DSM and use it because I paid a lot of money for it.
It's kind of heavy.
But yeah, so there are some essential features on the spectrum disorders, and one of the main heavy hitters here is persistent impairment in reciprocal social communication and social interaction. So the key word there being reciprocal, like we're mirroring another individual's emotional experience, which again is something that we really take for granted. Excuse me. We take for granted throughout our day-to-day lives.
So I want to be very clear here with a disclaimer that there is zero research to link any sort of autism disorder anywhere on the spectrum with violence. I don't want people to think that that's what we're trying to infer here, because we're not. We're trying to offer some explanation of diagnoses that these murderers have been diagnosed with in the past, and saying, okay, what piece could sort of fit with disconnect or lack of empathy or some of the mindset of what we're seeing with these incels. Now, again, not all incels are going to meet a diagnosis. And I think that's part of the point today, is that we're really trying to just piece this together and say, where does this fit? But there isn't any research out there that links violence to autism spectrum.
And the same thing when we look at psychosis. It's like this, there is a correlation, but there's not a causation. You can correlate anything, right? And so and usually what's interesting is that I want to do kind of talking about an overlap when we look at the rare incidences of violence in people with psychosis. There's almost always an additional comorbid factor, such as substance abuse. I mean, that is, so there's another thing that kicks it off. I think that's what we're kind of talking about here, is that if this is a constellation of factors that come together that create this, really toxic crucible that produces an individual like this. So, or that produces behaviors like this.
Sure. Okay, so the next incident I want to talk about is involving Chris Harper Mercer. So he's the 26-year-old who shot and killed 9 people in 2015 at Umpqua Community College in Oregon, and this was the deadliest mass shooting in the state's history. He also killed himself at the end of the incident after being wounded by detectives who responded to the incident. And he also had a quote-unquote manifesto. I think that term gets thrown around so much these days. However, he was posting online about being involuntarily celibate, and some of his lines aligning with incels and that community. He was sort of the guy that dressed in the pseudo-military fatigues, talked about guns a lot. He lived with his mother, graduated from a private school for children with learning disabilities, and the only indication that he had possible diagnoses was his mother got online after this all happened, and in defending him and talking about him, referred to him as, quote, an Asperger's kid. So that's not very definitive.
It's not.
That could be her saying, oh, this is my diagnosis. However, highlighting him is less about the diagnosis and more about the fact that he outwardly acted violently, and had previously been involved in some of the incel communities online.
Well, and what's the first thing that your diagnostic professor tells you when you start grad school?
Don't go around diagnosing your friends and family.
And don't diagnose yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, and I feel incredible compassion for that mom, trying to make meaning or trying to have some kind of understanding for what happened. But, that goes into another conversation about how we pick certain members of the community when they do horrific things. We want to put a mental health diagnosis on it, and we don't extend that courtesy to other members of the population, which is not appropriate at all.
Oh, gosh. It completely infuriated me that recently after the shooting here at the Borderline Bar in Thousand Oaks, that because he was a military vet, all of a sudden people were saying PTSD. And I'm like, whoa,
yeah.
Let's back up. Hang on. I'm pretty sure that people that suffer from PTSD are more prone to injure themselves than other people. It boggles my mind.
Once again, it's a set of factors. This is a long evolutionary process. I mean, as I've talked before, that amazing social worker Kevin Cameron in Canada, who teaches workshops on this, his quote is, "The path to violence is an evolutionary process. No one ever snaps."
Right.
So
I love that. Even though there's a TV show called
Snapped. Yeah.
Okay, and then
Betty Broderick was pushed.
That's right. Every husband should watch it. So most recently, in April of this year, 2018, we had the incident in Toronto. Mm-hmm. So this involved 25-year-old Alec Manassian, and he intentionally struck a number of people on a busy Toronto street with a rental van. So when you just hear that, what do you think?
Well, rental van? Come on.
Rental van, people running into them, terrorists.
Yeah,
terrorist
exactly.
cells, right? Because there's been specific orders put out as to...
Oh, I'm sorry. I took it to a place like the free candy van. I'm sorry.
Rapist van?
Yeah, I thought it was the rape van. God, what is wrong with us?
What is wrong with
How
you?
did we ever manage to find partners that would marry us?
Oh, my God. It was before we became like this. We trapped them early.
Jeez.
So he killed 10 people and attempted to kill 13 others. He was arrested uninjured, thank goodness. He tried suicide by cop, but they weren't falling for it and were able to take him alive. But the victims were predominantly women. He had released a Facebook message just prior to the incident saying, "The incel rebellion has already begun. We will overthrow all the Chads and Stacys. All hail the supreme gentleman, Elliot Rodger."
I'm so creeped out by the title Supreme Gentleman. It's
Isn't
almost
it
like
weird?
It's very weird and archaic, and it also has that tone of
Toxic masculinity.
well, that weird guy that will try and flirt with a woman by using gentlemanly language and saying "milady." You know that
Yes.
thing that's like, no, that doesn't ever work. That's never ever worked. Not even for people who are into Renaissance fairs. It doesn't work. But
Or like Chris Angel fans.
is he still around?
I don't know. I think so. Yeah, it does have a very weird title. Like he should be wearing a top hat or
Milady.
the information we have so far. I mean, there's not much. Obviously, this just happened a matter of months ago. Maybe you have some that you can add to it. But former classmates described him as being socially awkward. Again, total speculation. They believe that maybe he suffered from sort of social or mental disability. He consistently would rub his head or his hands, but he was an IT expert and an app developer. I mean, again, you were talking about intelligence. This is someone that was intelligent. And then you had some other people that were like, didn't seem weird to me. So there's just all kinds of reports that are all over the board so far with him. But I think it's very interesting that it was a very concise message that sort of hit all the points. Incel rebellion, Chad's and Stacy's, and hailing Elliot Rodger.
And did you see did you talk about his Facebook post?
Well, the quote that I read was from that. Was there something else you wanted to hit on from
so
that?
he called himself Private Recruit.
Oh, okay.
So he posted as Private Recruit Manassian Infantry 00010, wishing to speak to Sergeant 4chan, please. So that was the online forum. The Incel rebellion has already begun. We will overthrow all the Chads and Stacys. All hailed the Supreme Gentleman, Elliot Rodger. So all throughout that message, there's decoding that goes on. Each one of those points that he is sending out a dog whistle to everybody. I'm going to make a big move. Everybody needs to follow me. And he's going to take as you were saying, he's going to give himself an out in that he's going to have the cops kill him. Mm-hmm. Great police work that they didn't do that.
Wonderful de-escalation and restraint. Good job.
Yeah,
we're going to be able to learn so much, hopefully.
Yeah. So he refers to his view of himself by calling him an incel, by making an attempt at a derogatory terms of women and men that he feels hold a higher place in society than him, because this is all about an attempt to reclaim what is supposed to be entitled power.
Right.
I'm supposed to be able to have this as well. You've taken it away from me. You've kept me from achieving my goal. So I'm going
to punish you.
I'm going to punish you.
Right.
And I'm going to make you kill me so that I don't have to have any consequences for it.
Okay. I'm going to move into the area of just kind of explaining a couple things as far as threat assessment, because once I dove into this, of course, I was like, what research is being done out there? Who can I call to say, what do you got? So I want to kind of take people through that a little bit. I think this will end up being a bit of where we wrap up. But in the study of threat assessment, which is really trying to predict violent behavior and looking at who's at highest risk for violent behavior. Ooh, you pulled up pictures of Chad and the incel, huh?
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, they even go so far as to draw identifying sort of animations or cartoons of themselves. So
right.
The incel engages in what's called the virgin walk, and they have sort of like an emo looking cartoon, a guy in jeans and slender, dark hair, dark glasses, dark long sleeve shirt, slumped shoulders as he walks. And then there's the Chad Strider, who is just sort of like cartoonishly muscular. And actually, what's fascinating to me, even about the way these things are drawn, is one, there's more detail that goes into the incel, and then Chad is almost drawn as if, almost like Johnny Bravo. Do you remember Johnny Bravo cartoon?
Right.
Sort of hyper masculinity to a point of buffoonery.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I know that one looks almost more ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, this is what I want to be, but I'm going to make fun of it.
Yes.
Because I can't achieve that.
So in the world of threat assessment, there's this idea that people who pose a risk of violence are either hunters or howlers. And the howler is someone that he or she will make threats, will try to get attention, try to frighten people to get revenge or feel like they are they've been wronged in some sense and they want to make a stink about that. Howlers want to be seen and heard, but they don't necessarily want to harm anyone. They just kind of want to make a big fuss about it. Instead, they want to sort of, think about it, kind of control their victim's emotional state. So make them fear them. So maybe some online threats. Whereas hunters, they do want to strike and possibly harm or kill their victim. So they will lie in stealth. They will avoid getting noticed until they strike out against the person in violence. So they do intend violence, but they're not trying to gain attention. They're doing it very stealth-like. So those are hunters, and then there's howlers. And generally within the violence threat assessment community, people fall into one of those two categories. And howlers never become hunters, and hunters never become howlers because their intentions are totally different. It's interesting because I think incels have flavors of both. And I don't know that I can really think of any other subculture or group in this field that has that. So if you think of like terrorists, right? So a terrorist cell would be definitely hunters. They have propaganda. They let everyone know what they're doing. They might try to get their message out, but they'll plan in stealth and then strike when they think it's going to be most deadly. Whereas the stalker that just wants to really rattle that woman at work that turned him down will do creepy things, leave messages and notes on her car, or call and hang up, and that's a howler. Okay. He's just fucking with her to rattle her, but he doesn't want to harm her or anything like that. Just wants to, freak her out.
Yeah, there's no harm there. I'm not gonna physically harm you. I'm just gonna drive you insane.
And I should make it clear, it's all about the intent. I think there are stalkers who do want to physically harm their victims, and they might leave a note or call on the phone and give some threat, but their intent is usually to hurt or harm or kill. So wow. So I just find it interesting that incels kind of fit both, in that we are seeing some that are acting out violently. So I reached out to someone that I know at the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit and said, hey, what are you guys doing with this? Send me everything, right? And there wasn't much. He says that there is a cadre back in Quantico that's looking into this. And he sent me a study that it's available online. It's a report put out by the FBI. It's called the Study of Pre-Attack Behaviors of Active Shooters.
Wow.
And it's a sample of 63 active shooter cases between the year 2000 and 2013, where they break it down and look at risk factors. There are a couple things that were interesting. Really, the only stressor that applied to more than half of the sample was mental health. And it didn't mean that there had to be a diagnosis. It was pretty loose and vague. It could be that people saw disturbances in them before it happened. Only one active shooter was diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. Another one had a developmental disorder, but there was nothing across the board of diagnoses that it sort of honed in on any significant specific population. But 13% of the shooters in the sample were found to suffer from sexual frustration, which they defined as pronounced and ongoing inability to establish a desired sexual relationship. So, and this ranged from, this ranged from school shooters to active shooters in their, 50s, 60s. So wow. Huge age range, not a huge sample, but again, we're talking about a pretty rare occurrence, and just went up to 2013. So a couple more interesting points out of the study that I thought just felt like it fit with the incel community, or could be related to some of their traits, is that all of these individuals in the 63 shootings that were looked at had some sort of grievance. And the grievance was some sort of distress or resentment. And they found that the perception was not necessarily based in reality, but they feel like they've been wronged or treated unfairly or inappropriately. They went on to define this as it's more than a typical feeling of resentment or passing anger. The grievance is often results in a grossly distorted preoccupation with a sense of injustice, like an injury that fails to heal. And I just thought that was
that's pretty
great.
Intense.
Nearly half of the active shooters had some sort of suicidal ideation or had engaged in suicide-related behaviors at some point prior to the attacks. Over half of the active shooters participated in leaking intent to commit violence. So leaking is what we say when they, in passing, tell someone or leak information in online rantings or writings.
Is that intentional? As in, like, I want to get caught? Or is it part of a bravado? What do you think?
Well, we see that when we look at just suicidal behavior in general, we see there's a majority of them, if we in retrospect go back and look, people who attempt suicide have told someone about it or written about it, and they get written off so many times or not taken seriously. So I don't know what it's about, but I know we see it with people who enact violence inward towards themselves.
Right.
So it may be just something similar with someone who commits violence towards others.
I'm interested in that now because I know when we're assessing for suicidality, you always want to look at is there a history of gestures? So, and gesturing meaning that there's ambivalent intent. There's ideation, which means you're thinking about it, you're considering the implications, but the gesture is not like a fully formed plan
right.
with actual life threatening. I mean, there are plenty of people who have been, who have accidentally killed themselves while they were practicing a gesture.
Right.
That happens a lot, but I'm wondering if there's sort of a crossover here that this is Jill Loomis, Dr. Jill Loomis. I was really great therapist over on the West Side in LA, and she used a great term when we were talking about a situation. She said that clients send up flares.
Oh, okay.
Like they'll reveal information like that because they want you to notice, they want you to latch onto that, but it's indirect. It's like I'm not
so
throwing
catch it.
You have to catch it, or you have to notice where it's exploding in the sky. So I wonder if it's something like this is like these guys are sending out a flare.
I think so. And then lastly, in 30% of the cases included in this study, the active shooter created, prior to the attack, what's called a legacy token. And so that's something like a manifesto or a video that's uploaded, social media postings, something that is deliberately communicated. So this is definitely like, I'm pushing the send button now. I want everyone to see this before I go do this. So legacy token, that's interesting. A glorified term.
Yeah.
But aside from the FBI's behavioral analysis unit, I reached out to a couple of doctors that are the leading experts in risk assessment and threat management and assessment. And they said there's virtually no research out there. There is no research being done on incels right now that they knew of. But it's a wide open area. It's kind of interesting and exciting, I think, for psychology. I hope someone's doing something.
I do too.
But again, a difficult population to research. Especially if we're looking at even the smaller sample that does act out violently, because a lot of them, as active shooters do, take their own lives or get killed in the process. So, I mean, I'm really like pinholing this down into behaviors that they possibly could be capable of. But I think it's a wide open area for research, which is fascinating.
To tie this back to what you were speaking of earlier in regards to potential inroads to treatment, the idea of these individuals are so isolated. So how do you get to them? And how do you crack open that world when gaining a sense of mastery or moving outside of their comfort zone and where they have been in this really an echo chamber, a real echo chamber of, toxic beliefs and systems of thought, breaking that down is going to be very difficult. It makes me think of the phenomena in Japan. I know we've referred to this a couple of times before, the hikikomori, and that's a generation of men who basically, have retreated from life, and they live in their bedroom in their parents' apartment and haven't left the building, in 20 years because they just live their life completely online, and they don't have relationships other than these sort of fantasy relationships with online people that may or may not be who they say they are.
Sure. I'm just so fascinated, with your therapist friend in the Midwest who's treating an incel. How does someone like that come to the attention of, needing therapy services? And that's what I was saying before. It just shocks me that they would self-refer, and or how would they become onto our radar? So we can't study what we don't know is out there or what's not causing a problem.
For those of you that are interested in reading more about this, there's some really great articles. There's actually, and I don't always say this about Psychology Today, but I think Psychology Today did a really great condensation article on some main points about it. Alex Manassian has a lot of articles on him. Interestingly enough, there's not a lot of articles on Manassian that go in depth into his background as much as Elliot Rodger. I mean, there's a lot of media out there about Elliot's background.
Well, he wrote so much about it in his manifesto, which do we believe it? I mean, you take it with a grain of salt, but
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting perspective, and we got another manifesto coming up in another episode.
Yes, we do.
But I would also highly recommend, and I don't want to go too much into it right now, but there is a wonderful article. It's on a website called Quillette for women writers, and it's called "I Was a Female Incel." And what I like about this article is that it's tough to read. It's a tough read, and it's very worth it. It's very thorough because you actually see the progression, the healthy progression of someone who bought into this ideology and was affected by factors of her own mental health, including severe depression. And we really didn't touch on depression, but depression is a really big factor.
Absolutely.
I'm saying gateway drug. What I was saying before, it's a gateway.
Pathway.
It's a pathway to this subculture. But this writer fell into it, and I mean, really lived the life.
Wow.
As a female incel, and then came out. And what was the thing that transformed her life was a relationship, getting into a healthy relationship and slowly moving out, and finding a therapist that worked for her, and a combination of medications. And it's really amazing because the way she wraps the article up is showing, sort of giving an idea of her looking back on where she was mentally and emotionally at that time, and it feels alien to her, that she's just no longer there.
I love that.
I like
to
it
get
too.
all that information
for
someone who's been there and back.
And here's the thing, there may very well be men who have made a similar journey towards, for lack of a better term, towards recovery in this, but we're probably not going to hear about them because they're out there living a happy life, a normie.
They're a normie now.
They're a normie. And
how does she refer to herself? Like a recovering incel or incel in remission?
She just says it in the past tense. I was a female incel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, really interesting. And what's that website again?
Quillette.
Okay, I'll put a link.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll link to the article. It's really good.
Right.
So, guys, thanks for tuning in and downloading and all that lovely stuff. We've got a follow-up to this episode.
We do. We have a fantastic follow-up to this, and think I want to wait until we start the next episode to kind of talk about how that all came to be, because I can remember a very specific point in time when it popped into my head, and I knew we had to sort of touch these two subjects together. But this has been just so interesting for me, and I feel like this is probably one of the topics that I knew the least amount about and really dove into over a period of time. So this one's been really fun, and I feel like I am not done with this. I don't know what I'm going to do with this topic in the future.
I think we need to go deeper. I think we need to come back to it.
Yeah, I think we need to do that here. I think I might do some stuff, in work-wise with this, or just educate myself as much as possible and see what I can be involved in the future. But it's a great, interesting topic that sort of touches on everything, but to be continued as far as the second phase and where we're going to take it in the next episode. And other than that, we're slowing down a little bit because of the holidays, and I'm going to be out of the country for a couple of weeks for Christmas and New Year's, so we're going to crank out a couple more for you, and then we'll get started again after the first of the year. But we just want to say how appreciative we are of all the people that have started listening lately. It blows our minds.
It's still pretty great.
And it's awesome. So we love interacting with you guys in any way that we can. Please let us know if there's things you'd like to know about. Sometimes it's just so obvious to us and it might not pop up on our radar until we find something we're interested in, but we'd love to hear your ideas. Okay, well, we will catch you guys next time on LA
Not So
Confidential.
Bye.
Bye-bye.